If you're like most Americans, you probably have a negative impression of Russia and its leader, Vladimir Putin. In all likelihood, that impression is based on a few things: Pussy Riot, gay rights, and old Soviet Union communism. The resulting anti-Russia hysteria may have made it easy for you to believe that Putin and Russia invaded Crimea and that they are the bad guys in Ukraine. But as this video will show, you're getting played. Just like the Saddam Hussein had WMD lie, and the Bashar al-Assad gassed his own people in Syria lie, the US has made up a story in order to get the people to go along with its actions in Ukraine and the rest of Eurasia. Do you even know what Pussy Riot did to get in trouble? Don't feel bad, most people don't. Pussy Riot got arrested for doing an anti-Putin protest inside one of Russia's oldest and most respected churches. Here you go, take a look for yourself. Whether or not the performance was blasphemous, as some claim, it was definitely lame. Still, they shouldn't have been arrested. But can you name one country in the world where protesters can go into a place of worship and get away with what they did? Following their arrest, the US was quick to criticize Russia's treatment of Pussy Riot, saying it was evidence of a crackdown on dissent. That's pretty ironic, given that the Obama administration arrested over 7,000 people during the Occupy movement. And what about all the talk of Russia supposedly making homosexuality illegal? Is Putin really homophobic? Check out what he said in January.
I can't answer the part of your question about whether homosexuals are born or made. That is beyond my professional interest. I'm just not qualified to respond. I would like to draw your attention to the fact that in Russia, unlike in one-third of world's countries, being gay is not a crime.
That's the second piece of the Russia is the bad guy story that doesn't hold water. But the US propaganda machine said Pussy Riot, Russia hates gays, Pussy Riot, Russia hates gays, so many times that a negative view of Putin and Russia was imprinted into people's minds regardless of the facts. And then there's the old notion of Russia being a communist country, which invokes feelings of the Cold War and Americans being taught to duck and cover in the event of a nuclear attack by the Soviet Union.
We must be ready every day, all the time, to do the right thing if the atomic bomb explodes. Duck and cover.
What a joke. Unlike the US, the old Soviet Union never used nuclear weapons, and today's Russia is a capitalist country, just like the United States. But the media, including many of the so-called progressive outlets, we won't name names, drank the Kool-Aid on the Pussy Riot and homophobia issues and bought into the outdated notion that Russia is an enemy. This was very damaging and paved the way for the American people to passively sit back as our government fomented an uprising in Ukraine by supporting violent anti-Semitic neo-Nazis, and now they have the nerve to blame the resulting fallout on Russia. The United States government and their flunkies in Europe claim that Russia invaded Crimea, but only the terminally naive believe that. The people of Crimea voted to join the Russian Federation. But even if one chooses to believe that Russia forced the referendum to happen, it still wasn't an incursion or an act of war, as the American establishment has claimed. They conveniently don't mention that Russia already had troops in Crimea because of a treaty they have with Ukraine that gives Russia the right to keep 25,000 troops on a part of the Crimean Peninsula. And now the U.S. is ironically accusing Russia of fomenting an uprising in eastern Ukraine and is threatening Russia for having troops inside Russia along the Ukrainian border. Can you imagine another country threatening the U.S. because there are American troops inside the U.S.? That's beyond ridiculous, but that's what John Kerry, John McCain, Susan Rice, and Samantha Power are doing. And to take their behavior from the level of idiotic to flat-out hypocritical, the U.S. just deployed 6 American F-15 aircraft inside Lithuania, pledged a $10 million increase in border security aid to Moldova, declared its desire to strengthen NATO's military cooperation with Armenia and Azerbaijan, stated it wanted to send more troops to Romania, decided to send more U.S. troops and military aircraft into Uganda, announced it would expand its covert support of the Syrian opposition, which includes al-Qaeda, is fomenting unrest in Venezuela, and was exposed for trying to start an uprising in Cuba by secretly creating a Twitter account to inspire Cubans to organize smart mobs to trigger a Cuban spring, or as one USAID document put it, to renegotiate the balance of power between the state and society. Amazing. But then again, America is exceptional.
This exceptional American idea.
American exceptionalism.
American exceptionalism.
A testimony to American exceptionalism.
American exceptionalism.
The United States is indeed exceptional.
America is exceptional. What makes us exceptional? America is exceptional. Some may disagree, but I believe America is exceptional. In part because we have shown a willingness, through the sacrifice of blood and treasure, to stand up not only for our own narrow self-interest, but for the interests of all.
It's true, America is exceptional. It's exceptionally unhealthy, exceptionally undemocratic, exceptionally repressive, exceptionally violent, and exceptionally, let's just say, not smart. So when Putin ran the risk of getting on the bad side of the empire by calling out America for its rabid dog behavior and its superiority complex, how could you not stand up and cheer? Rampant nationalism has become so bad in the U.S. that virtually everyone is afraid of saying anything in defense of Putin or Russia regarding Ukraine. Even people on the left in America are denouncing Putin and Russia. This has got to make the neocons happy, since it makes it a lot easier for the U.S. to do its dirty work in Ukraine. But you're not anti-American just because you form your own opinions objectively. Why should you always have to cheer for the home team? Especially when the home team is the initiator of so many problems around the world. In Ukraine, Phase 1 for the U.S. was to use white-collar terrorists from the National Endowment for Democracy to kick off the crisis. Given that Moscow is only about 500 miles away from Kiev, the U.S. knew Putin would not just sit back as anti-Russian neo-Nazis were put into power in Ukraine. So Phase 2 was to then use the U.S. propaganda machine to convince people that Russia was the instigator of the problems, which helped perpetuate the anti-Russia hysteria in the U.S. It's difficult for Americans to not view Russia in a negative light, but don't forget, it was Russia that gave temporary asylum to Edward Snowden at the same time Obama and virtually every member of Congress were calling for Snowden's head. And it was in part because of Russia's diplomatic efforts that the U.S. didn't go to war in Syria, which would have been based on the lie that Assad gassed his own people, as Putin rightly stated last August. And who wants another Cold War? That would just mean that more U.S. taxpayer dollars would go towards the military and weapon manufacturers, instead of going towards things that actually improve the quality of life of U.S. citizens. Right now, the U.S. spends only about $0.5 billion on Alzheimer's research, while it spends $750 billion on the military. Where would you prefer your money to go? If the U.S. gets away with convincing the public that Russia is the bad guy in Ukraine, it will chalk this one up to a victory and would be able to do to other countries what it just did in Ukraine. That means the U.S. will continue to side with neo-Nazis, al-Qaeda, and brutal dictators, and that's why the U.S. has to be defeated on this one. Oh, but I can't cheer for Putin, he's a bad guy. Well, he may or may not be, as this video has shown. But if you're an American, you pay tax dollars to, and maybe even voted for, the U.S. citizen assassinator Barack Obama, who has bombed 6 Muslim countries, deported over 2 million immigrants, signed the Monsanto Protection Act into law, and spies on Americans like no other president in U.S. history. So don't worry about it. You're fine cheering for Putin and Russia on this one.